What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I go by the name of Gio. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I want to get a little bit real about software engineering. Now, I often talk about the things that I enjoy about being a software engineer, but I never really talk about the things that I hate about being a software engineer. Now, it is a blessing to be an engineer, especially during these times where it's tough to become one, but I do want to be real about the frustrating aspects about being a software engineer. So hopefully this video can shed light on what it's like to be a software engineer towards the negative side. So let's get started. The first thing that I hate about being a software engineer is the tight deadlines. Now, being a part of a company, you have to understand that the whole goal of being a company and being a business is generating revenue. That is a fact. But because of this fact, it usually means that there are sacrifices that need to be made based on the promises of the company. Companies have rivals, and because of that, they usually try to overpromise on deliverables and features. Now, it usually comes down to two things. The company either hire more engineers to meet that goal, or there tend to be sacrifices on the time of the engineers. Now, what did I just say? The goal of being a business is to generate revenue. So usually hiring more engineers is not necessarily the first thing that a company looks for, depending on the culture. Usually, they tend to push more onto the engineers that work for them, and that comes with sacrifices like the loss of time on the engineers, and eventually with that loss of time, it can lead to burnout. And as an engineer, I've experienced that. I experienced the over promises or the tight deadlines that comes with being a part of a company. And honestly, that's one of the things that I hate about being a software engineer, because if you're not want to make a sacrifice, especially a part of a team, you're looked down upon because everybody is aiming for the same goal, right? You're a part of a family. That's what they usually say. But yes, it's cool being an engineer, but there's things outside of being an engineer, and making that sacrifice constantly and burning yourself out is not necessarily the best for your mentals and for your life, period. So that's one thing that I dislike and hate about being a software engineer, is the tight deadlines and the sacrifices that are expected to be made as an engineer. And if you're not a part of that sacrifice, sometimes you might end up losing your job. And it really, like I said, depends on the culture of the company. A lot of companies are good at work-life balance, and a lot of companies are not good at work-life balance. So, tight deadlines. First thing I really hate about being a software engineer. The second thing that I hate about being a software engineer is the constant learning. And I know that's the first thing that we learn about being a software engineer, is that we're constantly going to have to learn new stuff. So I did know that part about being a software engineer, and I did go in expecting that. There's always going to be new stuff. And at first, I loved it, right? I love being able to go in and just learn a new tech stack, learn new things, and utilize those new things. It's the constant learning. But over time, it can kind of get very old, especially nowadays where being a software engineer, you're expected to know everything at all times. Being a software engineering consultant, you're expected to be a front engineer, a backend engineer, a cloud engineer. You're expected to know and be an expert at everything. So it can kind of get pretty tiring, because you're constantly having to keep track of everything. The latest front end update, the latest technologies and AI. There's so many things that you have to constantly be aboard on, and it's impossible to be an expert from 9 to 5. Usually it requires you to do some research when you're not on the clock. So that constant learning factor can be very tiring. And like I said, I realize a lot of companies expect latest software engineers, especially juniors, like I said, to constantly know everything, and that's really impossible. And over time, it can also lead, there's a lot of things that can lead to burnout, but that's one factor that can lead to burnout, with constantly having to want to learn or need to learn everything, because a lot of roles are being merged into one. Instead of just being a cloud engineer, a front-end engineer, or a back-end engineer, a lot of people are just one engineer, full stack engineer. Everybody's expected to be, or a lot of people are expected to be full stack engineers, instead of just being dedicated to just one role. And a lot of companies are releasing new types of technologies, and there's so many paths that you can take. Like Python can have a path, Java can have a path, JavaScript can have a path, and there's so many sub technologies within that path that can be stressful, because companies reorganize a lot, and it may lead to you having to master something else within that path. So I remember in one of my companies, I had to go from Java to Kotlin, and you have to be an expert in Kotlin within a certain period of time. So it can be difficult in that sense. of that constant learning, because you're really working on a whim of where higher ups tend to want to go. The third thing that I hate about being a software engineer are the meetings. The sheer amount of meetings. Now, I have no problem if the meetings are necessary and there's things that we're going to go over and it's required, but there tend to be times where a meeting is just really a discussion between two people and there's 10 people on the call. Like, why were the 8 other people needed for this call where it could have been resolved individually or it could have been resolved in an email thread, right? So usually, you wake up and you have to have stand up, there's retrospectives, there's a cleanup of the backlog. There's so many meetings for so many different things, and a lot of the times they're just not required. I know now there are companies that are starting to make rules against meetings, and a cool one that I read about is Elon Musk. He has 6 rules on productivity, especially with meetings. The first thing is avoiding larger meetings, right? And the second one is getting rid of frequent meetings. The third one is leave when you're not adding value. So just like I said, where there could be a meeting and a discussion between 2 people where the meeting has 10 people inside of it, if you're not adding value to the meeting, then you should be able to just leave. You shouldn't have to stay in that meeting. And then there's the fourth one, that's avoiding acronyms. I remember I was in a company where there were so many acronyms, they even had a encyclopedia just for acronyms to know what they mean. That's how many acronyms that they had. Then there's another one for communicating directly. So not needing a meeting for 10 people, but just communicating directly to the individual. And the last one is just follow the logic and not the rules. My last job had an unofficial rule about having meetings on a Friday. You were not supposed to book it. I mean, sometimes if it's necessary, then you can, but for the most part, don't book them on Fridays, and just keep that person's life free so they can be able to work and then go into the weekend pretty happy. So every company has different cultures when it comes to meetings, but I would just say in certain companies, the meetings can get excessive and they can get annoying, and that's one thing that I hate. All right, so the fourth thing that I hate about being a software engineer is that companies tend to fall in love with the shiny new toy way too fast. We see it all the time. Companies see a shiny new toy, maybe the CEO saw it in a blog, or it's on the front page of Yahoo or Google or whatever they look, and they're like, yeah, we have to use that right now. We have to be the company that utilize that right away. We see it right now with Gen AI. There's a lot of companies that utilize technology that they don't even necessarily need yet. They just ride the wave because other people are riding that same wave and they want to be a part of it, right? They want to be quote unquote modern. And it can kind of get annoying for the engineers, a part of that company, because you're pausing projects to hop on a wave that in the future may not even be utilized, or may not even provide growth to the company, or it may provide short-term growth but not long-term growth. You're not making yourself different from all the other companies if everybody's riding the same wave. But that's just one thing that I dislike about that, is that you see the shiny new toy and you hop on it, and then in the future you just give up on it, and now what could have been done in the past is now something that you try to rush to get done in the future. And you have stable toys that are available, right? They're right in front of you, and you can build the same thing at the fraction of the time, at the fraction of the cost. But just because that shiny new toy was available, well, we made that sacrifice to jump on it and realize it's not exactly a toy that we expect, and now everybody's complaining. But you just gotta listen to the higher ups and go from there. I would say one example is that when I was first starting off in software engineering, every company wanted to hop on machine learning, but they didn't know what to do with it. And it was a very big thing. Everybody want to jump on machine learning, and it's useful to companies that have a use case for it, but it's a specialty that requires a special amount of skill sets, and having your engineers stop and try to learn a skill set that doesn't necessarily correlate to your type of company structure doesn't make sense. And even now, like I said, with Gen AI, you have a lot of companies utilizing Gen AI for chatbots, and their company doesn't necessarily need. If anything, they need real customer service with real individuals so that they can get the answers faster, not through chat bots and language models using ChatGPT. That's going to give you information that may or may not be correct. But that's just my opinion, right? I would just say that companies just got to do a better job of not jumping on the shiny new toy, but actually utilize tech that fits their model, right? Or have a plan on how to use that shiny new toy. If you want to use the shiny new toy, have a plan to actually execute it properly. And the fifth thing that I hate about being a software engineer is the lack of control. no matter how good you are, no matter how hardworking you are, sometimes you're just set up to fail. You just have no control over it, right? Whether that's the department change, whether that's funding because of lack of leadership, whether there's lack of career movement because of lack of communication. Sometimes it's just a lack of control and it's really out of your hands. I believe right now that companies are expecting way too much from junior engineers, and it's really out of their hands, right? I feel like companies right now do not have the ability to mentor and grow the individuals within their company to reach that next level, right? You have a lot of companies are not investing into their employees, and it's really sometimes out of the control of the people that work for them. Right now, there's no patience. They expect engineers coming in to have years and years of experience, or the junior engineers to already know 3 different tech stacks. It's crazy right now. There's no push for learning. There's no push for growth. Even right now, for senior engineers, there's a lack of mentorship because either the senior engineer is moving to another company that provides more pay, or even the senior engineers who do provide mentorship are not really patient. They're not really caring. They're not really wanting to be in that role. Sometimes senior engineers are forced to be in that role, and then you have bad mentorship, right? And that's really out of the control of junior engineers. They're being set up to fail, unfortunately. I've already been a part of multiple layoffs in my short 3-year career. And like I said, that's another piece of lack of control. You have the hardest workers, the people that really put the time in, and really it just comes down to numbers. It's really out of their control. I've seen many people get looked off for promotions. They put in the work, they talk to their peers, they talk to their leaders, they volunteer themselves, but they often get overlooked for promotions. Another example of lack of control. I've seen companies position their junior engineers for failure, right? Like I said, bad mentorship, whether that's coming from seniors or managers, having junior engineers just sit around doing nothing, keeping them from growing, even if the junior engineer asks for work. Um, like I said, lack of control, and usually that ends a young engineer's career very short, right? Because now they're 2 years in, a year in, and now they don't have the skill sets required to elevate. And now they on the resume it shows that they have a year or two of experience or even more, but they don't have the skill sets to move on, right? So just lack of control on that part. Now, this is an issue in every career, but I just wanted to shed some light on some of the issues that arise being a software engineer. Now, like I said before in my video about what I like about being a software engineer, there are many blessings about being a software engineer. So I'm not just complaining about everything. I just want to shed some light on some of the issues that occur in software engineering. And it's not all rainbows and sunshines all the time. You do got to put in work. You do have to be the best version of yourself. So that's why I'm just shedding some light on some of the things that I hate about being a software engineer. These issues are just a part of the journey, and hopefully you can learn from these issues. You can be aware of these issues and grow from them, and hopefully you can use that to push yourself along that journey. Everybody has different paths because every company is different, every culture is different. So some of these issues may not be what you experience, but I am curious to hear about some of the experience that you hate about being a software engineer. You can leave that down in the comment section. We can extend on this conversation, and hopefully you found this useful. Go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, and like I said, comment down below about your experiences, about what you hate, or even like about being a software engineer. I'm curious to hear about both, and stay tuned for more videos. Thanks for watching.